All right. I think we're live. And as soon as we have one brave soldier in the chat room telling us that they can hear us, we will begin talking about relevant information. But until then, you look pretty. You have...
I was going to say, what irrelevancies can we talk about in the meantime?
Right. Let's see. All right. John is there, and Jonna can hear us, and that's all that really matters. Oh, there's two. So I think we're good to go. So we can skip the irrelevancies, or at least the minor irrelevancies, and get to the major irrelevancies right away. Okay. Hi, everybody. Word Salad is back. Dani is here with me. I'm Emily Moyer. That's Dani Katz. And we have decided, at least for now, for the duration of election season here, to revive Word Salad live streams on YouTube, because despite the fact that both of us find elections and politics in general irrelevant, our minds, for some reason, desire to continue doing this exercise of expressing opinions on everything and sussing out every little inconsistency and lie and whatever it is that people tell. And so what better place to do that than in front of everybody here in public, and save all of the relevant information about the things that really matter, like how perfectly your shoes fit, for our supporter content on locals, right? No, we're just kidding. For now, all of the stuff related to external, like La La Land, mainstream world politics will be discussed here. And the deeper, more esoteric, more original to us type of content will exist for our supporters over on locals. So that's the plan for now. It'll probably change 10 more times over the course of the year, but that's what we're doing here. The show will be short, somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. We'll present a few relevant sort of current event topics related to the election and politics. We'll take questions and comments. We'll appreciate super chats if you got them. And then we'll say goodnight. How does that sound, Dani?
It sounds like a phenomenal plan. Is it off topic if I ask if you have any misgivings being a walking billboard for Adidas?
Oh, I mean, I don't really, I don't like, I so overdid the like eating outside of my normal permissive stuff over the holidays that I still have not returned my body to the place that I'm willing to let people see my arms. And so I put my jacket back on when I just came up from the gym, or came down from the gym. So that's really all it is. Right. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's probably not as bad as Nike, but worse than Lacoste in terms of like human rights abuses and political ideologies that I disagree with. And yeah, I don't know. It's mostly peeling. I guess I could just peel it all off, right? And the jacket would still be fine. Maybe I'll do that.
It's a cute jacket for sure.
Well, thank you. It's like nice and thin. It's like the perfect light little exercise jacket, right?
Yep.
We're supposed to save the conversation about how our clothes fit. I
knew I was messing it up the second it came out of my mouth.
All right. So you just got off, you kind of have a little fire in the belly from the things that you just found out about. So let's go with those first, because anything I have to talk about at this point will be a little bit of reanimating a dead corpse to get it up and going. So let's start with some energy and then we'll see what happens.
Okay, so to be clear, this is all like second and third hand because I haven't really been tracking the sham show. But here are the pieces that I've heard. I'm going to go in chronological order. So Monday, I was on a radio show and the host brought up how the University of Michigan put out a statement saying that it would defend freedom of speech, it would defend diversity of thought, and that was specifically stated, and it would no longer tolerate the sort of like dehumanizing character assaults passing as discourse instead of talking about ideas. At the same time that came out, apparently University of Wisconsin Law School has instituted a re-education program for their first year law students that they're calling a reorientation around DEI issues. So we had like both of those going hand in hand, and I did not have a chance to look up whether or not Open Society just gave University of Wisconsin a big fat donation to get them to say something so incredibly stupid or institute such a ridiculous policy. So that's piece number one. Any response to that before I continue?
So I hadn't heard about either of those things, but the thing that just strikes me immediately is Michigan, University of Michigan, obviously is in Michigan, which has one of the largest Arab populations in the United States. And they're not very happy right now with, sort of the Democrat Party, or like that sort of the group that they're normally associated with politically right now, because of the ongoing support for Israel. And so I think that this is kind of in reference to that. I think it's basically a way of saying, like, we're not willing to go along with the idea that like anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are the same thing, and that anybody who disagrees with the policies of the state of Israel is anti-Semitic. And they're in that scenario probably because they probably have a lot of Palestinian or Arab students. And so it's a response to that. Like, they're in that scenario because their block of people is that. So my guess would be they were backed into this, and it isn't really one of these like heartfelt, they have changed from inside kind of things. It's like, we better cover our own butts. And I don't really have anything to offer about the Wisconsin thing, right? I don't know enough about the University of Wisconsin. I'm assuming it's at Madison, about the makeup. I mean, I'm assuming that it's mostly like white liberals, their students. And so this seems probably typical, but I don't really have anything smart to say about this, except for that it's interesting that it comes the same week that Jordan Peterson lost his appeal to not have to go to re-education camp if he wants to keep his license to practice psychology. And I did not listen to him and his daughter talking about this, although their video did come into my feed, but I did look into the comment section, and there are people in the comment section laughing about him because he doesn't even practice. He's not even practicing clinically anymore. So it's like, what is the point? You're just like continuing this charade so you can run around telling everybody what fascists they are, but you're not actually even going to use the license or whatever it was. So I thought it was kind of interesting that that was sort of the tone, right? Because at this point, it's hard to take Jordan Peterson seriously, even though I'm definitely opposed to the idea that anybody should have to go to a re-education camp for any reason, right? So we're in an interesting place with all of this. And I think that those things are happening simultaneously, is sort of that whole sort of split-brained, you know what I mean? This sort of cognitive dissonance that our reality is completely in right now.
Totally. I just pulled up the University of Michigan thing to see if there are any pieces there. I mean, regarding Jordan Peterson, he's a rule follower. He loves rules and order. So I would imagine that it would create like a low-level anxiety for him to not have that, I don't know, approval, that like whatever that is, like, even though he might not be practically losing it, I could see for someone who seems to be wired the way he is, that he needs that certificate on his wall or whatever that is. I mean, I hear what you're saying about what may have inspired this thing at Michigan. I would like to think that this pendulum has reached its outermost orbit and is swinging back because it has gotten so insane. But one thing that I thought was cool is it was in a unanimous vote by the Board of Regents. So I love that there wasn't even any pushback. But I mean, for me, I just keep thinking like there have to still be sane people in these institutions who have to be frustrated. It's not like everyone is a brain dead, confused, brainwashed, DEI lover.
Well, let's see where this goes. I would like to believe that too. And let's see if one school doing it like gives other school like an itch in the balls to do it as well, right? And if we start to see that, then yes, maybe it's the pendulum. But if that's the only school we see do this, or maybe if we also saw like Minnesota, which also has like a big, large Muslim and Arab population, be the only two to do it, then I would think it was more innately political. But if we start to see it sort of across the board, then I'd be more inclined to go with that, which I hope is the truth.
I hope it is as well. And maybe for our behind the paywall show, I'll look into like what donations University of Wisconsin has received to institute their re-education camp in their law school.
Yeah, like, and I'll if we like, whenever we do it, if we're still kind of in this conversation about it, maybe I'll go and look and see what A, the makeup of the student body at Michigan is, and B, what the makeup of the board is, and see where their donations are coming from, and see how, like, what are the really active organizations on campus there as opposed to other schools that haven't done something like this. So
it's interesting because I'm like, I just pulled up one random article on the Detroit News, and there's a photograph. It says University of Michigan Regent Ron Weiser. Weiser sounds like a Jewish name.
It does sound like a Jewish name.
So yeah, this is something that we can unpack in our other show. So here's what else came across my radar today. Ooh, did you see the new James O'Keefe hidden camera video? So he's got some White House intern spilling the beans on the like wild sexcapades in the White House and the bribery and blackmail that goes on around it. What I thought was a little bit odd is it's obviously being filmed on like secret hidden camera because of the quality, but he's talking to James O'Keefe. Like, right. Why would you spill the beans to James O'Keefe if you didn't think that he was going to be using it? Because we all know that that's his shtick. So I just thought that was odd. Maybe there's something I'm missing.
I can't speak to it, except for I know that like last week there was like some weird one caught with James O'Keefe and Mark Cuban talking at the gym, right, or something. So I don't know if this is just like he's got a new modus operandum since he left Project Veritas that is either based on just further like more guerrilla, kind of like being just aggressive that way, or it has to do with budget constraints that he has now that he didn't have then or something. I don't know. But never underestimate how clueless people are and how many things people haven't heard of because of how, like, the number of things my dad, I had an interesting conversation with my dad today that we'll get to later. The number of things he doesn't know about and hasn't heard about, like, is equally not surprising on one level because we understand the sort of how divided everything is in circus mirror, but also it's like, wow, like you really live in a fucking cave. Like you really have not been out of that cave, whether it's an ideological cave or in his case, a literal cave because he's been ill for many years and whatever it is. Like I literally asked him today, when was the last time or ever, have you ever had any meaningful conversation like with someone who is a Trump supporter, right? And he doesn't know if he ever has, at least not during the period of time when Trump's in politics, right? So, you know, that like, when that was like a year, like when that was 2017 for someone to say like, I don't know, like still seemed semi-reasonable, like, okay, like you've been busy or this just happened, but we're in 2024. And like that is we're talking about a person who's the bane of your existence. Wouldn't you want to understand a little bit about the people who he appeals to try and understand what's going on? So that level of cluelessness, right? I can see how there's probably a lot of people who either don't know who James O'Keefe is or wouldn't recognize him if they saw him face to face. They just know the name.
I think that there's something that they're putting in the programming, in the mind control mechanisms that shuts down any urges to do one's due diligence, to move outside of their comfort zone, because that's a script that I hear, like whatever sort of confused friends I have left, a total unwillingness to talk to people on the other side, to watch an Alex Jones video to determine for themselves what they think. Like, I think part of the programming is do not look.
Well, this was the part that was so weird, is that's normally the response I would expect. What you just said, my dad, this wasn't a hostile response. My dad was like, you know, I don't know. I can't think of it. And at the end of the conversation, I made a few suggestions to him. And instead of telling me that I was crazy or whatever it is, like he normally does, he says, I will take your suggestions into consideration. So there was some other strange things in the conversation too, that is like, where did my father go and who has he been replaced with? But there was other things, but there was other things that I know it's exactly him. And it's just, there's like a level of dissociation from reality where you become completely irrational and belligerent. And then there's a further removal where you're like, I actually I don't know what happened. And there's this bewilderment that he couldn't deny he was in. And so he had to give word to that, give sort of voice to that.
Okay, so I have a theory as to what may be going on. This is nothing too groundbreaking, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is not a regular show. But I was at the hot springs in Colorado over the weekend. And when I'm in that state and I'm super relaxed, a lot of the time I can see the floaters in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw self-replicating nano shit in my eyes, black gunky stuff that I had never seen before. And I know that stuff is programmable, that they're using that stuff to run programs and to have people act in ways that might be out of character or say things or do things. And I think at this point, we're all probably pretty loaded on that stuff.
So different than the normal floaters?
Yes.
An upgraded level of floaters? Okay.
Yeah, dark black, blobby, globular things. And there were a lot of them. It was freaky deaky. I'm doing Borax now twice a day because I'm no, not okay with that.
I occasionally see a floater, but they're the same kind of floaters I've seen my whole life. So I haven't received the upgraded operating system yet. I'll keep my eyes out for that.
I mean, it's also odd when I don't know what it is where I can sometimes see the floaters or cannot. I'm not sure if it's a state of relaxation or whatnot. But in terms of just people in our lives acting out of character or behaving in ways where it's who are you? I'm just wondering how much that's part of it. Not to get too weird, but it's probably too late for that.
Okay. You had two other things you said to me on the phone real quick.
Okay. So the other one was Elon Musk at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, I saw that was happening. First of all, it's been some weird Ben Shapiro appearances this week. He was on, I watched about 25 or 30 minutes of his debate with Destiny on Lex Fridman. And that
was about all I could take as well.
So much delusion and so painful, but it did feel like a different kind of appearance for Ben Shapiro than his typical one. And then I saw that this thing was going on with Elon and Ben, and I was like, wow, this is fucking weird. Not surprising, but weird. And it was bizarre. I've never seen the few little minutes of clips I saw from the thing with Elon Musk was the most sort of quiet and reserved I've ever heard Ben Shapiro. He just was speaking very little, and with someone interrupted him and he just let them, which is very unusual, right? He was in complete deference in a way that I never see him be in deference in his normal venues for opining, right? It's weird.
Also, is there an established relationship between he and Elon Musk that I'm not aware of?
I think that's probably the premise of all of this is these two are coming together for the first time over this issue. I'm sure they've met or spoken before, but I'm sure this is all part of a conversion therapy for Elon. Yeah. Okay.
And then the last piece that I heard was that Carrie Lake secretly recorded, I don't know if it was an in-person meeting. I think it probably was. Some East Coast Republican asked her how much it would cost for her to shut up and get her ass out of politics for the next few years. And
so she caught it on recording.
She recorded it, as I have heard. Apparently Daily Mail UK has it, and she was like, "Fuck off! I'm not taking your money."
So I saw the headline in some of the aggregators and feeds I was looking at yesterday while I was preparing for this tonight. I didn't read the article, so I didn't see anything about that there was a recording, but I was aware of the fact that there's a story out there saying she had been bribed to drop out or to shut up or something, to get out of politics or something like that.
Attempted bribe, because as I understand it, third hand, she did not
attempted bribe. Yes, someone tried to bribe her. She didn't bite. Yeah.
I mean, she seemed, obviously I haven't met her, but she seems pretty consistent in her integrity and her stance and her perspectives. I haven't seen any inconsistencies with her.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with her about a whole lot, and I don't. Right. I'm not on board with a lot of her ideas, but I always hear her say the same thing. So yes.
What I am on board with is how she carries herself and how she calls out bullshit when she sees it. I think it's
she definitely isn't scared, right? She definitely is just like, this is what I think, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to stick to it, right? And I can appreciate and respect that. Yeah. So I was aware of that, but I didn't know there was a recording involved, and that makes it more interesting because now it's not just hearsay or, you know, having to believe her. If there really is a recording, and then if that recording can actually be tied to a specific person, then this is going to be interesting.
But no, it's going to be nothing, just like all of the work that James O'Keefe has done, because the mainstream media is so captured that it doesn't. That's what's so frustrating. It's like there's so many gotchas that go nowhere because of the media capture.
Well, it's fascinating to me how many like really significant gotchas go nowhere, and then how many things that like I think are actually minor do end up having some repercussions, even though maybe it's not the appropriate repercussions. Like little shit gets made a huge deal about, and shit that's big just gets totally ignored.
Of course, that's how it always is.
So, but it's sometimes it feels like bizarre. Like I don't always understand the rhythm or what the divining tool is for which one will be which. Sometimes I clearly get it. Like sometimes it's very obvious, and other times there's the ones that it's like, huh? Like you're gonna go with this one? Like this seems like, I don't know. Yeah, it's very weird. Okay. Anything else? I have a couple of things.
I am complete.
Okay, so I'm just gonna maybe go in like kind of chronological order. So last week when we weren't doing a show was like something that got me, I don't know if it got me fiery, but for those who don't know, Ray McGovern is like one of these guys who's been on the like quasi alternative information podcast radio show circuit for 15 or 20 or more years now. Like he's a CIA sort of whistleblower, right? Who's oftentimes part of these like organizations or coalitions that are, defending Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or some other, some sort of cause that is one of the types of causes that maybe progressives and libertarians sort of come together in some weird way over it. He's been around for a long time, and it's definite, like, he definitely did work in the government, like in CIA, and he's definitely has a long profile, right? He he tried to go to 2, it looks like, RFK speaking and Q&A type events last week. And he was barred from entering one, and I think he kicked out of another one, like once he had already gotten inside, and he went to basically confront or question, he's a civil person, so I'm sure it would have been in a civil way, RFK, over the fact that his uncle and his father would not have agreed with the policy he's pursuing in relationship to Israel-Palestine. And he knows that because he worked with them, and he knows that RFK knows that because he met RFK Jr. from that scenario. So he can't deny that Ray McGovern knew his family, and that Ray McGovern was working with or for or sort of adjacent to them in some way during certain periods of time, right? So they removed him from the premises. And whatever, like, I don't know how many people who are listening to us still have any like attachment at all to the RFK Jr. story, but I know that there's lots of people in the alternative realms based on like the health freedom stuff who are still willing to sort of consider him based on the fact that he's good on topics that they care about. And especially as things are starting to play out now, where you have the WEF and the Congress trying to do things related to disease X, like the threat of something like that coming up again, and people willing to go, okay, I'm willing to overlook genocide and apartheid to protect myself from the next lockdown or whatever it is. And there being people sort of in our sphere of media, even people that we know that we've had on shows before, who somehow are still willing to work with RFK and not question him publicly about some of this stuff. He's a person, so he's a liar. He's lying, right? If he was honest, even like, if let's just say that that's really how he feels about Israel, then just stand on your own 2 feet. and don't say your family has a long history of supporting Israel, because that's not true.
But
right?
he can't say, he doesn't stand on any of his own ideas. His
Correct.
whole thing is my family, my uncle, my uncle, my uncle.
Right. So, right. But if he was just wrong, like the thing you said about Carrie Lake, like, I don't agree with her on a lot of things, right? But I respect the fact that she has a position and she aggressively defends it, and she's consistent in what she says, and she doesn't depend on someone else for, for support in her position or whatever it is, right? But also, one of the main things that people who think he's good on health freedom also think that he's good on is protecting whistleblowers and listening to whistleblowers and things like that, right? They really think that.
Why do they think that?
Because he talks about agency capture, either intelligence agency capture of sort of our social reality, or like a regulation agency capture, like corporate capture of regulation. He thinks that people think he's going to be good on that he's going to be good on listening to whistleblowers. And he just kicked a known whistleblower on some very important topics out of 2 events, right? And so that ends that fairy tale also, that like he has respectful whistleblowers, right? Because if he really respected the whistleblower, let him say his thing and then either have the debate with him, right? Or just keep telling your other lie, but let him say his piece, right? Because that's what whistleblowers do. They say uncomfortable things, and then you may or may not do what they want you to do. So like at this point, I don't understand. There's no legs to stand on. There's no peg legs. There's no, what do they call the fake limbs? The prosthetics. There's no prosthetics. There's no, there's
no crutches, no
crutches
for his knee.
Correct. Right. So those videos of Ray McGovern getting kicked out are available on YouTube. So people can go look at that.
Has RFK put out a statement on that at all, or is he just ignoring it the way he ignores all pushback on his Israel?
I see very little RFK anything coming through my feed anymore. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me how many things there aren't statements on. Like, I really had to dig hard to find the documentation about Del Bigtree being his director of communications, and guys who believe in Del Bigtree might want to ask him why he's okay with all this other stuff as well. But he didn't even put a notice out about it on his own website. Right?
That's so weird.
Not RFK's, not on RFK's website, and not on Del Bigtree's website. I was able to find a PDF online of a letter that he had sent to his supporters that, of course, also asked them to donate $1,000 to become part of the think tank that would help him create the policies and blah, 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 all that kind of shit, right? So I don't know what exactly is going on here with all of that, but yeah, not much pushback, right? Like, I feel like it feels like there's been, I'm of 3 minds about this. Right. I'm of like, that I was completely wrong. And there's like no RFK issue at all. Like, he's not even going to be a factor. And I got it completely wrong. There's still my original intuition that he's going to end up at the end of the day being the establishment candidate. Right. Because of whatever, they're going to arrest Trump and Biden's going to be, put in the, dementia ward or whatever. And this weird set of policies that don't really make sense to anyone who has previously, been fond of him, but that he's put together with the help of his CIA daughter-in-law, like that's actually going to be the platform that the establishment wants. And it's just kind of doesn't make sense to us the way it's going together, but he is going to be the establishment candidate, or he's the foil, right? Or he's just completely there as the foil to steal votes from Trump from some weird way, right? And
it's not weird at all.
And to usher in either Biden, or now, like, it's starting to seem possible to me that in some weird way, like, at the last minute, they'll switch him out for Dean Phillips, who is also a rabid pro-Israel person that Bill Ackman is now just gave a bunch of money to. Bill Ackman, who's like controlling the presidencies of the universities now, and the testimonies in Congress and all that kind of stuff. So he's like the new Sheldon Adelson or the new George Soros or something like that.
Wait, isn't he funding RFK's campaign as well?
I don't know. Like, I think we looked and we couldn't quite find something on that.
I know someone told me that he was, but yeah, I haven't looked it up.
When we looked, I couldn't like, there's like some nebulous things that like, yeah, maybe, but there wasn't a smoking gun. But I have him on Twitter saying he gave Dean Phillips $1 million last week at a pivotal point, and he was like, at this pivotal and dangerous point of his campaign, I'm choosing to take the risk and give him $1 million.
Right. So it's, I mean, I just did a simple DuckDuckGo search. He's donated to RFK. He's explaining why he's embraced RFK Jr.'s skepticism on the vaccinations.
Okay, so are these
very
new
publicly
articles?
to be supporting RFK?
Is this new? Because last time we looked, there was nothing. But you looked on DuckDuckGo, and last time I looked, it was just on Google. It was during the show. When was his?
Here's one. January 5th, 2024 is the newest.
Okay, so that is more recent. That is since that is newer. That's before what we looked at last time.
But again, we don't like funding RFK could just be to get Trump out, or it doesn't necessarily mean that he wants RFK because it's such a giant shell game. This
Correct.
whole theater.
Well, it's just I mean to me. Like his purpose would be to make sure that we don't have any major candidate with any chance of winning who isn't pro-Israel.
Correct. But I mean, is there anyone running who isn't pro-Israel?
I think there's like degrees of like zealotry or excitement about it, right? And he wants that to be like, I think he wants just super pro-Israel, super pro-Israel, and super pro-Israel as the options, right? It can't just be like, semi-neutral on it.
Right.
It has to be like the defining characteristic of, and then this weird new DEI where like we like DEI as long as Jews are considered to be part of the oppressed class. Like that seems important to him too. So they must have that characteristic. So maybe he won't support Trump.
Did you see, maybe you sent me Glenn Greenwald's thing on Jews now being included in this? He was so funny, his deadpan, because there are no Jews in Hollywood.
Right.
And we really have to address this. He was so good.
Glenn Greenwald had an amazing, completely deadpan, dry sarcasm piece on how tragic it is that there are no Jews in Hollywood, no Jews in the banking industry, no Jews in any positions that actually matter. And now we have brave people like Julianne Margulies and whatever speaking out.
And she's on that terrible propaganda show I've been watching.
Of course she is. Okay, so yeah, so check that out. And then the next thing that I listened to that like I wanted to talk about, but I didn't find a way to talk about it really until this thing happened with my dad that I was telling you about before that I'll tell the more full story of right now. So I did listen to, do you know who Mark Crispin Miller is?
Yes.
Okay, so I saw him on with Patrick Henningsen the other day. Mark Crispin Miller is the professor from NYU who got in a lot of trouble just for presenting information about how much propaganda there was with the whole COVID thing. He wasn't even like presenting a pro or anti. He was just like spot the propaganda about it because he teaches communications, right? And then it got him in all kinds of hot water at NYU and
apparently he said that the girl, it was all because of a tweet, and it was some girl who like joined the class late, and it seemed like a big setup.
Yes, it's always that, right?
Yeah.
So he's become like, I've seen him several times on like Tom Woods' show. He's been around quite a bit, since the COVID thing, right?
Yep.
So he used to be an election integrity activist, right? And so he was talking about like all of these sort of psyops around the elections for the last 20 or 25 years. And how it's really interesting how that, who's ever cared about them and who used to care about them but doesn't care about them now, and who cares about them now but didn't used to care about them, right? And he's been part of movements for cleaner elections or for questioning electronic voting machines and things for a really long time. And so he's of the opinion, which is rare for a person from the left because he is of the left, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't know if he still would consider himself that, but that was for most of his life, his position on things. you rarely hear, although I certainly have always thought this, and I remember having this conversation with Randy like the day after the election. Like, he firmly believes that Trump was installed by the establishment in 2016 based on his understanding of election interference and all of that kind of stuff, and that Joe Biden was installed in 2020, right? And that you don't ever hear that. Instead, from the left, you want to hear this like Russiagate stuff about the explanation for 2016. But that his opinion was that that the establishment decided that, that Trump was better. They knew the COVID thing was coming. They were already planning that. And they felt that he was necessary to create the kind of divisiveness around that would allow for the level of political chaos that they would need to advance their next agenda, right? And then Biden became best for that now, right? And his concerns going into this election about, it's a different model of election interference all the time, but there's been the same problems for way longer than people have been willing to, back into the 90s, right?
Did you see what was just behind your head?
Was it the feather UFO?
No, it was like laser beams. I'm not looking at the chat, but if anyone saw it, please.
Okay, so I'm well known, and if Laner is here, she mostly listens to my shows. She's like, I'm here for the feather orbs, dude. Right? At some point during almost every show, when I've said something of significant value, right, the feather UFO orbs or whatever will make their appearance. But I did not see the laser beams. But okay, we got lasers tonight. That works. Anywho, so I thought it was kind of just, his conversation was sort of interesting, because you don't usually hear someone acknowledge that. And then when I had this weird thing with my dad sent me the strangest fucking article, right? Like, he sent me this article in the middle of the night. And I'm like, wow, my dad hasn't sent me a political article in a really long time, right? He must be bored and like need like his blood to be reboiled or something like that, because it always turns into something semi-hostile. So I read it a little bit, and then I was like, I'm never going to get this 10 minutes back. I closed it. And then when I was trying to put together things for this, I'm like, well, maybe like, I want to ask my dad, does he really think this is true? Like, why are you sending me this? And is this really what you think? And so I had a conversation with him. And of course, the article was just like, the usual, like, Trump is, seems that Trump has plenty of support, and, it's all just because of racism, like the same bullshit that it always is. And I'm like, to my dad, do you recognize that people either insisting on this or continuing to believe this is going to lead to exactly what you don't want, which is Trump as president again? Because it demonstrates a fundamental lack of awareness about why it is that people who like Trump like him, and why people who don't like him are still willing to vote for him, right? And so we had this conversation, and it was a weird conversation, because I found that we didn't actually disagree about our opinions on anything when it comes to like substantial policies or opinions about how things should be as opposed to how they are, right? But he couldn't let go of how dangerous Trump is, and how the most important thing is, right? But he wasn't being rude about it this time. And I told you, it was like, he doesn't cross-pollinate with anybody he doesn't know anybody, so he wouldn't know why people do. And I was like the main reason most people are willing to support Trump is because they feel like the establishment doesn't want him, and they don't want the establishment, therefore they want him. Right? Like, that's like probably the main driver, specifically of people who like maybe voted for him the first time, didn't vote for him the second time, but like it was worse under Biden, and now they're willing to sort of go back, or people who had originally like voted for Obama, but then voted for Trump because they were so disillusioned from Obama, right? Do you understand that? Right? And he really was having a hard time getting his head around that. And it was like, okay, this is really strange to me. I'm like, what do you know about these issues? And I started naming about how like the Democrats canceled primaries and this, that, and the other thing. And he had like a cursory understanding of some of that, but it's like, there's a whole half of reality. Not only is he wrong about, but he's not really even aware that exists. Right. And to me, the way this is going, it seems like, oh no, system wants Trump again. Right. That all of this, like, if they didn't want Trump, they would ignore him. right? Because every time they double down on charging Trump, bothering Trump, or whatever, I mean, look what happened in Iowa and New Hampshire, right?
Well,
Crazy.
I mean, I have no idea what's going on with the elections or if, they do want Trump or don't want Trump. But in terms of divide and conquer, the divisiveness around like not just Trump, but Trump voters and Trump supporters is really supporting their plan because it's keeping us apart.
Correct. Right. It's divisiveness. But also, I think you were saying to me, I can't remember if it was before we got on or when we were on, about how like we're about to, like, the world is going to be so messy and they'd love to blame it on Trump. So, right.
So that's what the No Agenda guys have been saying, is like, because Biden has, we can't even say Biden fucked shit up, right? Like the deep state, Obama, the globalists, like the oligarchs, the lizards, the archons, whatever. It's such a mess right now. Like, just think, like, they opened up the borders and so many people flooded in, but we haven't really seen how bad that could go, right? If we have a secret militia here or something.
Right.
But if they deploy that under Trump,
right,
along with other things, he's left with the mess, and then they can blame him for everything being so sucky.
The other thing that could be, because he still refuses to denounce his own Operation Warp Speed. If like the bill comes due on all the craziness that might be, that has gone on because of the countermeasures and the economy and this and that while he's president, then it'll be like, well, he's the one that started Operation Warp Speed, so let's blame him, right? Like, so I think there's like a lot of things that works for, right? But also, there's like, there's also the whole, I mean, Jeff has his like narrative about like, there's this sort of like Christian Reich element that can be that people aren't recognizing could happen, like not necessarily because of him, but under him, that would be overlooked and wouldn't be overlooked if he wasn't there, type of thing, right? So
what would that look like? What does that mean?
Just like, I mean, and I'm not saying that this is like the narrative that I most closely feel, but I've heard it from enough people, like very like Handmaid's Tale kind of shit.
I mean, I feel like that's where we're headed with this current administration. The one thing
Right, but people will notice it under this administration in a different way than if we're in a Trump administration, when that really comes to fruition, same as the other stuff.
I don't think Trump would, like, I don't claim to know. I've never met Trump, but it doesn't seem like that would happen under Trump. And what I do think is important, the one piece of news that you and I actually haven't talked about, is what they're trying to push through the WHO, which is the full-fledged enslavement of the entire globe. And it's not like a minor thing that's like, oh, not a big deal. It's a huge deal. And
don't worry. Brett saved us from it when he went on Tucker Carlson.
Because he exposed it.
Oh, brave.
Brett
he was so brave.
It. None of us had any idea until Brett let us know in 2024.
I know.
But Trump pulled us out of the WHO when he was in office. And that is one thing that I think, like, I'm not a fan of like lesser of two evils type of voting. That doesn't work. But that issue does feel like it's of primary importance. And if the only thing Trump did was pull us out of the WHO again, we would all be very well served by just that one thing.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of I'm not a fan of voting at all. But for people who are fans of voting, I think that like the idea of lesser of two evils is like the most demoralizing, pathetic thing that I've ever heard of, right?
Agreed.
Because it's a commitment to permanent evil. It's like, well, we can't not have evil. So like, it's like just submit right away. Like, we're always going to have evil. And so it's just degrees. Right. Yeah.
It's so disempowering. It's like, we can't have justice. We can't have fairness. We can't have freedom. Like when I see it in my clients, I'm like, you get what you settle for, raise the bar on your expectations. And we need to do that. I know we're not voting, but the people who are playing that game, it would be wise to evolve the mindset towards what do we actually want versus what's going to suck less.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was also like telling my dad that like if the the uniparty or the media or whatever the corporate conglomerate or whatever wasn't just doing the shit they always do and were actually serious about wanting to swing people's opinions or defeat Trump or whatever, I can think of like a couple of issues that would be winning issues that would move people who are only voting for Trump because they're so disgusted with Biden. And I was like, why does it not bother you that they're not coming up with a candidate who would promote any of these ideas, which not only do you say you believe in, but I actually agree with you. And while I wouldn't vote because I don't vote, like there's a lot of people who hold my opinions about things who do still vote, right? And it was funny because he couldn't even, like, that is a pro-positive reason to do something as opposed to lesser of two evils. He couldn't answer the question. He kept having to revert to the other thing. So it's so weird how that has just become the groove lock, right? Like they can't even try to dance to another tune. It's like, nope, it's just always that rhythm we have to dance to, and that's it.
Whatever DARPA psychopath created the TDS mind control, they deserve the Nobel Prize. Like right. Whatever the technology is that is allowing TDS to exist is brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. So the last little thing I have, to me, like this is the best one, right? Like this is the best. So this is kind of like, this is one I haven't heard before. Alien abductions as tools to fight structural injustice. You ready for this one?
What?
All right, let's see. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Something changed on my screen since I pulled it up. So let me make sure I have it right. There it is. Here we go. Let's give everybody sound. I'm going to try and keep it small so we don't get in trouble for using it. But here we go. How about this one?
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Fair use.
What do you think the UFO phenomenon is?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, that there are a lot of different varieties of it. But when we look at, like we were looking at the Francis of Assisi and the kind of historical things and the abductions and things like that, I think that it's been around for a long time and that these are things that are in communication with us. So what I do in my book, both the books that I wrote about this, is I talk to people who I think represent thousands of people. So each person in the book represents thousands, if not more, maybe many thousands of people who have had experiences and the ways in which they interpret them. So all of the people seem to have had experiences where now what they want to do is they actually want to work for justice in different ways. Like Jose, the veteran in my book, he's working with young people and helping them deal with being addicted to social media and things like that, and helping them get through life, which is really hard right now. And that's what he's doing. And then you look at Dr. Whiteley, right? So she's working in the Space Force. She's trying to, help people deal with the fact that they're seeing things that, that could down planes and things like that. And she's helping people talk about that. She's helping people. Each person is somehow doing what I'm suggesting that I think is an out to this kind of structural injustice that we see. So what
the fuck is she saying?
I thought that was I'm like, wow, what the fuck is this? That first of all, whoever does Joe's bookings or Young Jamie or whoever's responsible for this, that was, I was like, what am I actually
talking to?
Right. So this person is a professor of religious studies who wrote a book about the UFO phenomenon. So I thought I had heard it all, but UFOs and aliens as tools to fight injustice. I was just like, wow, structural injustice. I was like, okay, I didn't see that one coming, but clip of the day.
I don't even know what to make of that. But I did listen to an hour-long Lisa Renee video this morning. I think that was it. That says if they show up in ships, don't go. It's a trap. Stay on the planet.
So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was definite word salad. And so a good clip to sort of wrap up our sort of reemergence to YouTube. But before we go, let's see if the peanut gallery the chat room has any words of wisdom or questions or anything like that. So I'm not good. I want to go through and see. There's a few places where we're tagged, but if anybody has a question or a comment that they would like us to consider or respond to, in all caps, please. That makes it easier for me to differentiate what is directed at us and what is just general chatter. If you accompany it with a super chat, we wouldn't be mad, but as long as it's interesting, we don't mind answering anyway. Let's see.
YME says O'Keefer is a gatekeeper from way back. Can you message one of us privately? Because I'd like to know more about that. Do you know about that, Em?
I mean, I've always suspected that just from that's but for me, that's like a personal, I mean, I don't see him as different than the other people that we critique. Viru says that we are the most intelligent women in the world. Thank you, Viru.
Thank you.
Isn't that sweet? Okay. Oh, we got lots of friends in the house tonight. Hey guys, thanks for popping in and showing up and hanging out with us. Yeah, I mean, I'm very suspicious of him. But as I have sort of come to a different place with my own, trying to iron out the contradictions in my own reality, right? Like, just because there's a way I would want him to be, that would be evidence to me that he's not compromised, doesn't mean that that's the way that it should be, or that it actually would be evidence of that, right? And so I don't think about it in the same way. I don't hold the opinion so strongly anymore, but, and everybody has the right to use their work and their stuff in the way that they want to. And even though the way he does it doesn't seem the most effective to me, if he really wanted to be effective, that doesn't mean that I'm right and he's wrong. So I can't say.
You and I have talked about this before, and it's not on journalists to enact justice.
Correct.
It's on journalists to expose the truth. Again, coming back to the media capture, like, I don't expect him to do much more than he's doing. It's not my style. I think it's a little bit sleazy, but I also understand necessity is the mother of invention, and these are desperate times in terms of getting truth out. So I give him a little bit of a pass there.
Yeah, no, and we've talked about that. Like, exactly. Like, I don't think it's journalists' job to enact whatever it is. It's just they have a story, they get it out there, they do whatever they can to make sure as many people hear it as possible. Yeah. So I in that sense, I'm in agreement. Like, the sleaziness of it, maybe, like, I'm bothered by that, but also just the kind of I feel like if the idea were to try to win over people who didn't already agree with you, or to try and get them to pay attention to your work, then because we know that there's certainly people on the other side of the aisle that also do the corrupt, gross, sleazy things, then doing something over on that side would sort of take away the ability for people to say, oh, it's partisan and it's this, that, or the other thing. But again, it's his work and he can do with it what he wants. And I certainly find a lot of it entertaining. Right. So I appreciate that. So somebody asked if we're going to have a consistent schedule. Yes, we are going to be here on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Central, as many Wednesday nights as we can be here. Occasionally we may have some reason we can't, but we will announce ahead of time if we're not going to be there on a Wednesday night. We are going to be here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central. If you have interesting stories that you would like us to cover, only related to politics and the election for this, all of our deeper stuff, all of our SFI, all of our lifeboat, all of our own weird other stuff and the psychedelic things and all that, that's all on our regular show. But send us clips, send us tips, show up with questions, comments. We love to play. The questions and comments can be about whatever. They don't have to.
Emily, Slow Core by Rise Pilates would like to know why you're not voting.
That was going to be the next one I was going to read because it was the next one in order. Yeah, I don't vote. I don't, to me, for myself, and I don't say that because this is what I think that this is what everyone should do, that voting is consenting to the system of needing somebody else to govern me. And I'm not down with that. The last election that I voted in was 2008. I voted for Barack Obama. Within 3 weeks, I realized I had been snowed. Within, a few months, I was exploring, libertarianism and Ron Paul. And within 9 months, I was like an anarchist or a voluntarist. I had read Larkin Rose and was kind of, it's not for me. I don't think that there is a political, an economic, or a governmental solution to the problems that we have. And so the amount of energy that is expended there feels like a distraction from the sort of evolution of our internal worlds that need that would lead to the kind of changes that I think would be meaningful. But that's my opinion. And so anyway, that's why I don't vote.
Can you elaborate on the piece about consent? Like how it kind of lends itself to like a deeper level of enslavement in the false matrix.
So that like this, that we have this system, whatever it is, where like, you know, the person who wins is the president, right? And you have to, if you participate in that system, you're saying, okay, I agree that I'm going to vote for, everyone's going to vote for who they want. And then the person who wins is in charge. And that's the way this goes. Right. And so like, then, but I'm not okay with that. I'm not only okay with somebody else's pick being in charge of me, but at this point, I don't think that I have the right to dictate who should be in charge of other people. I think right. So that doesn't work for me on that level.
Is there any recourse on the flip side by not consenting to voting and not participating? Is there some sort of out in terms of being governed?
So, I mean, I don't feel, I'm not sure I completely understand the question that you're asking. Like, I don't feel bound by a lot of the stuff that they do, right? Like, there's certain, unfortunately, like things that seem to be very difficult to sort of evade. But like, I don't, I just mostly at this point, I don't feel like I need to put a lot of my attention and energy into that. I feel like they like the resistance energy as much as they like the excitement energy, because it creates that sort of friction in the gas for it to go. So sort of withdrawing, I'm like a highly energetic person. And so withdrawing my consent and my energy from some of that, like, I don't know if what I'm doing is meaningful in any other way than like it feels at the time like that's the right thing for me. But also, I remember in 2016, like the same night where it was like you went to bed and it was at a certain level and then you woke up and things had changed and whatever. And my sister was losing her shit. Right. And like, we had like a huge argument, which and she basically accused me of being a Trump supporter. And I was like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, I don't vote. Right. I didn't vote. When I used to vote, I've never voted for a Republican in my life, right? But I don't vote. You participated in a system where you understand how it works, right? And this was the outcome of that. So like, actually, you're the Trump supporter, right? You're the Trump supporter and I have nothing to do with it, right? And so like, that was kind of a clearly defining, like I knew at that moment I would never sort of enter that fray again. Like I knew before that, but that was kind of like the sort of sealing the deal of like the sort of delusion of what people think the system is and what it actually is in terms of like consent and whatnot. Right. So,
that's a good point about being the Trump supporter. Cause I remember after Trump won in 2016 when so many people were like, not my president. And it's like, well, you played the game. So he is, because you're consenting to the game. You know, it seems more reasonable that those who didn't consent to the game would be able to pull the not my president thing.
Correct. Right. Correct. So I'm just looking here. So Cheney, I want to respond in order if I can, but Cheney said something which I think is, yes, I remember his interpretive dance. But Cheney says, when voting goes right to presidential, I see who doesn't know their local peeps. And I feel like that's a fair comment and assessment to make. When I was a voting person, I did vote for I didn't just do presidential or like senator or whatever, like I did all that other stuff. And one of the most like revealing conversations I ever had with my dad was when I was trying to suss out all that stuff, because like that was one of the years, like the last year I did that was one of the years where there was like some of the really confusing legislation about like gay marriage and different stuff where it was hard to tell if you should vote yes or no to do the thing. Remember when that was?
Yeah.
Right. Like it was so, and there was a lot of stuff like that last year. And I was spending a lot of time going through and trying to really sort it out. And my dad literally comes in the room and is just like, oh, just vote for this person, this person, this person, that one, and that one. And I was like, well, can you explain to me why? He's like, because I said so. I was just like, I'm like, what? He's like, I'm like, do you think, is it because you're a man that you think you can tell me who to vote for? Is it because you're my dad? Is it because you're a political science teacher? Like, what is it? Like, and we had, we kind of had a flare up around that. Right. But that was like the last conversation about any of that kind of stuff I had with somebody while I was still doing that stuff. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, and particularly, like, if all you're voting for is president, then like, what is the point of even participating, right? If you're not doing it at the level where like you could actually stand a chance of meeting, knowing, or talking to any of those people, then yeah, I think it's a fair comment.
I do think it's a fair comment. I think it speaks to like the ignorance of the voting populace. But just because it was Chantal that asked that question, I also feel like another piece of it is we have Dominion voting machines here in New Mexico. So it's pretty pointless. I mean, even my hyper liberal Trump hating landlords didn't vote for MLG, and she won, and she certified her own election. So I feel like here in New Mexico, even if I bought into it, it's totally pointless.
Yeah. Where's Chantel in the?
She's Slow Rise Pilates.
Oh, hi, Chantal.
Slow Core by Rise Pilates.
Hi, Chantal. I met Chantal when I was in New Mexico. Okay. So, and by the way, thank you, Sylar, for the super chat. Much love to you. And I did get your email, and I'm going to respond to you probably tomorrow. But thank you. And thank you for the email. Okay. Does anybody else have a question, a comment, on topic, off topic, anything else? I feel touched by how many of my friends and our friends showed up in the chat room and played along tonight. Thanks, guys.
Me too.
We really appreciate it. All right, we'll be back next Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Central. Maybe even some of the people who are in the chat, maybe we'll have them come on. And if Cheney, if you want to come on sometime, because we're only using these live streams. It's the only time we're going to talk about the election and like public facing politics and whatnot, right? In our regular show together, we do different weirder stuff. But if any of you who have opinions on this want to come and help us talk about that, then we'd be super open to that. So thanks, everyone.
And definitely send us leads, because even tonight we were like, what are we going to talk about? So if anything catches your eye throughout the week, please send it to at least one of us.
I just have one question while we're here and we have everyone here. Is there any person in the chat room that is still that was ever, or I love it, Cheney casts her ballot with white magic. Very good. I love that. Is there anybody here who is still considering, if there are voting people, RFK Jr.? Is there anyone here who's still considering him at all?
No judgment.
No judgment. I'm just trying to understand who it is they're actually going for, right? Like who is the I think
because they put Dell in, it's obviously who they like to brand as anti-vaxxers.
It's going to be the people who are most afraid of the disease X that Klaus Schwab is promising.
I think it will be the people who are most afraid of the remedies that they will try.
That's what I'm saying. The psyop of that.
Has he made a public statement about pulling us out of the WHO?
RFK?
Correct.
I don't think so. Like, I think he mostly talks about it in terms of the turnstile between the FDA and the CDC and then the pharmaceutical companies or the, Monsantos and things like that. Yeah. I don't think he has proposed any like legislation barring anything in the future. I don't think he's proposed I don't think he's done any of that kind of stuff. Like, I think he's pretty nebulous around the things he's good on. He's very nebulous about. The things he's terrible about, he talks about them like he's got that shit signed in concrete and he knows for sure the way forward on that, right? So, Okay, he is pro pro ball warming. I like that, like global warming, pro ball warming. Totally. Okay, so yeah, I think it's definitely none of these people. So it would be interesting to understand the demographic he's going for, or if this is just like some sort of weird, like brainworm or something that exists in the reality and isn't actually a thing, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. Our people are. I don't want to say it's not smart people who are in RFK's camp, but I think the people who are tracking you and me are pretty hip to what's going on in the sham show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cheney says if she's ever off work early enough, she's all ours.
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for jumping in, and we will be here next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central. See you then. Bye.